Warning: Please note that this podcast contains strong language and touches on many topics that may not be considered appropriate for a work environment. If you choose to listen to this podcast where you can be overheard, we are not responsible for the consequences of your decision. You've been warned.
Spoilers, people! We're gonna talk about feminism, and I'm not gonna end this sentence in some type of lame pun.
I'm shocked. No puns?
No puns, no remarks about all the demons that I wrestle with, or anything of that nature. We all have an X-Chromosome. My name is Bill.
And my name is Noelle.
Let's get the business out before we introduce our guest, which Brian has been bugging us about ever since we started the podcast.
Pretty much.
All right, so Noelle.
What we need from you, our beloved listeners, besides to have you write us at
xchromosomepodcast.com.
Yes, Bill's going to fill in all of the information about the ways to contact us because he's got that, and I don't. So, yes, contact us there. Find us on Facebook at We All Have an X Chromosome. We're on Twitter at
X-Chromosome-Pod.
And we're still not on Instagram because Instagram hates us.
Because we're still banned, and I haven't fought the ban.
Well, you're going to have time to do that now, so...
Yeah, unfortunately. Let's just say that for a little bit, I'm going to be able to give almost full time to the podcast.
Awkwardly full-time.
Awkwardly full-time, but full-time, yes.
But on that subject, we also have a Patreon where you can throw money at us so that we can keep ranting about feminism into the void, and you can be part of our producing team, and we very much appreciate everybody who chucks a couple bucks at us. We love you. We couldn't do this without you. It will literally allow Bill to fix his computer, which is great because it's taking him forever to edit stuff. So the sooner we get that fixed, the faster you get us in your ear holes.
Yep, I want to give a shout out to Jamie, aka Blind Zen Archer. They recently updated and increased their monthly contribution.
Yeah, loyal from the start, and we very much appreciate everything our Patreon subscribers do. We also have a direct PayPal link if you want to just do a one-time, like, say there's a thing you would like to see us do, and you know it'll cost money to make that happen.
But mostly the Patreon money goes through to help us with things such as paywalls.
Oh, yeah, there's tons of paywalls. Also, equipment upgrades. Like I said, Bill's currently working on a laptop that sucks super hard.
It's not made to edit.
It's barely made to record. So, it's a sad, sad state of affairs, and we would love to be able to get things out regularly on time without any concerns and without Bill going insane and having to devote every waking second to producing this podcast, because right now he's our sound editor, he's our main recording, he's the producer of the podcast. So
I like to say executive director, and we're both executive producer.
Okay.
All right.
Here I am, just the host, but
hey, you have just as much say as I do in regards to content, so I consider you a producer. I just do all the tech work.
I'm not techie, but I would like to be able to do more research without having to go to my local library, because they're usually closed by the time I get done with my day job, and it's real hard to do research on a home computer when you can't access the databases easily. So I'd like to get some paywalls taken care of for that, for things like newspapers, so we can bring you better stories and more complete information instead of having to rely on, hey, this article in the paper that we read a paragraph and a half of.
And one more thing about next month and the podcast setup for June. June is Pride Month.
We're going to be super gay. If this offends you, you probably shouldn't have been listening to the podcast anyway. Go fuck yourself.
Yes.
Pretty
much, that's the best way to say go fuck yourself. But we want to hear your stories. We want to get volunteers that might want to come on. So please.
We've got a bunch already, but more is better. Please tell us your stories about why you need intersectional feminism in your LGBTQ life, what it brings to you, what it allows to happen, all of that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. But because I like to be organized, please write us at xchromosomepodcast.com.
Yeah, so that we can keep track of things, because we want to make sure nobody gets missed. And we may have to just do a show where we read a bunch of stories, if we get a ton of responses.
Which I'm okay with.
I mean, I am also okay with this. But I'm a big fan of making sure that Pride sticks with its roots and is as inclusive as possible. In case you didn't know, because you're not up on it, Stonewall was a riot. We wouldn't have Pride without queer black women. Let's recenter shit where it belongs and follow them and support them as much as possible, because queer people of color have it so much shittier than any other demographic. I'm really tired of reading about murdered queer black women. I really am.
I think
so. We'll bring the rage.
We all are.
Too.
But yes, rage in the cage.
We all are.
And we might be able to discuss a little bit of rage. So I want to go through and introduce our guest.
Yes, we have a guest this week.
Almost ever since we started the podcast and started asking about possibilities for guests, I will call him the associate producer Brian, or assistant producer Brian, has like
our link hound,
who is all over our Facebook just like Noel is, because he sends us so much stuff. For like, hey, here you go.
Yeah. He also would be benefiting from that access to things that aren't paywall blocked, because he does a lot of research for me, checking up and making sure our shit is square and right with the Lord. But Brian suggested our guest to us.
And our guest is Kate Nix. Am I pronouncing that part right?
Yes.
All right.
Just like the goddess, the makeup company.
Awesome. So in my research, one of you do everything. You're a Renaissance woman.
Yes, and not just because I've worked at Renaissance fairs since I was a teenager.
Hey,
what fairs have you done?
I grew up at Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair.
Okay, I think I have a relative who's done Penryn.
Yeah, PA is it's like the Disney of Renaissance fairs. It's like they have like blacktop everywhere, and it's like, and there's like cups with your face on them and stuff. It's very sanitized. There's not like a ton of nature there. It's a very strange Renaissance fair. It's sort of this like this really like anachronistic, very like primary color McDonald's Playland version of Tudorism.
Oh wow!
And I think it really influenced who I am as a person.
That's a fascinating description. I don't know how I feel about that. That it's Disneyfied Tudor England. That's really interesting.
But yes, I do a little bit of everything. I've been playing music since I was a teenager and costuming since I was a teenager. And I was a burlesque performer from 2008 until 2017. And I used to breathe fire. I am a seamstress who makes primarily wrestling costumes. I learned how to do wrestling. I've done a lot of things and lived a lot of lives. And it means that I've gotten to speak to a lot of interesting people. And I think that's really informed my politics.
That's fascinating as fuck.
Yep. And basically, I kept on going. And you also do a podcast with your husband?
I do. He's actually in the room with us right now. We're in our house has two rooms essentially, the one where we sleep and the one where we work, and we're in the one where we work.
Okay.
That honestly, that's something that I kept on trying to drive a point home when I was in my last relationship. Like, look, I understand the enjoyment of having like all the workspace in the bedroom or whatnot, but I'd rather have the bedroom for sleeping and other things.
Yeah, it's the like resting area and the working area, because it's also kind of our living room too. Because it's like I wouldn't necessarily like to have a TV in the bedroom if I had my druthers, but we have like an Xbox in there and stuff, so it's like our entertainment. It's also like whenever I have friends over, it's essentially our couch too. So we live in a teeny tiny space in Philadelphia that I am trying to like Marie Kondo learn to appreciate.
One of my other I have another podcast, and she used to live in the Trenton, Philly area, so I understand a little bit with that area too. With that, so yeah, that's something in that regard. But yeah, Noelle basically from is getting ready to start the major set of her fair circuit until like mid-November.
Mm-hmm.
I do Great Lakes and ORF.
Oh, okay. So you might know the people I know from Murph then. From Michigan Ren Fair.
Possibly some of them. I work for Steve Pack. I don't know if you Steve Pack.
I feel like the main connector person for all my people at MRF are through Jeff Cass and the Festival of Legends. And I mean, I know people through like the steampunk scene out there. It's all kind of connected. All this like alter culture thing. It's all like in the same sort of. I mean, like burlesque and wrestling and all of my stuff. It's all kind of in this like. It's not exactly kinky, but it's not exactly children's entertainment.
Well, these type of things tend to merge because of various factors, and I'll be honest, most of these communities that are spoken about, like the kink community, the Ren Fair community, I personally don't know of, but with all the stories from my friends that are a part of it, same rules apply in many regards. Like, I might not do Ren Fair, but I understand the cosplay aspect of consent and things of that nature.
Oh yeah, it's the same. It's the same. Like it's all like the steampunk people are the cosplay people, are the fairy people, are the sci-fi people, are the people who go to PenguinCon, are the people. Yeah, like it's all. I mean, it's anybody who would have gone to band camp. You know, like we're just band camp adults. We're just allowed to get drunk and high now. And what's the swearing situation? Am I allowed to swear?
Yes. I've said fuck like 12 times.
I don't hear it anymore because I just I don't like swearing wise. I don't necessarily, it doesn't even register in my brain as a red flag. Like I'm completely desensitized. So even if you had said it, I wouldn't have I would have been like, yeah, you say fuck on this shit. Like it's fine.
One of the jokes I made about was going to be the last show, that the last show was going to be the Guinness Book of World Records for most curse words dropped between Noelle and our previous guest, because both of them curse a lot. I'm the one that's least likely to curse. I blame my friend Donnie. I've been following you mostly on Twitter. That's where you're more active, or it seems.
Yeah, because fuck Facebook. Am I right?
Honestly, we're probably more active on Facebook than Twitter. I basically am the one that's running the tweet machine, I call it, justifying things that might make me cry.
Here's the thing: is like as a person, I've had an online career for like 15 years now at this point.
Right.
I was online as a teenager and I'm producing my music, and then it became my burlesque and YouTube stuff. And like, I've been a content creator for about 15 years. And what was I saying? Wow. Okay. You just went right, just completely. Oh, why I can't be on Facebook. I nailed it. I'm back into it. And we're in the zone again. When I was on Facebook earlier in the platform, I developed a sort of, I don't know, I developed kind of a damsel in distress brand. Not necessarily of my own I don't know.
Volition?
I kind of just ended up there accidentally. Yeah, I mean, obviously I made active choices in my life, but at the end of the day, I realized like, wow, is my victimhood the only thing I can offer as a commodity? And Jesus Christ, is that who I am as a person? And I found that it was partially because I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder when I was 17, and I just struggle a lot with mental health stuff in general. So I'm pretty much always kind of like trying to figure out if any of the behaviors that I have are potentially indicative of problems.
Right.
And the Facebook algorithm, the way it is now, it is so focused on reactionary, hyper emotional responses.
Right.
And creating a loop of that in order to generate engagement.
Yep. And
it was making me fucking crazy. I was like, I felt myself playing into this role of like woker than thou. I ended up in a woker than thou place. I ended up in this place of like ultimate victimhood. And I wasn't paying attention to the way that I placed my energy in the world. And it was really fucking me up. It was really changing how I viewed people and how I viewed myself. And whilst I just don't find that the Twitter algorithms are as focused I guess, I don't know. It's maybe because there's not as much room to talk. Like you have to go to more effort to say longer points. So it's harder to just go on these spiels that can like hype people up in a way. Like you're less likely to word vomit for so long that people sort of like get frenzied. I don't know.
You have to prepare your word vomit in advance to do the multi-level threads that people copy and paste and put on Facebook.
Yeah, it's like if you stopped and read your YouTube comment back, you wouldn't be vomiting such diarrhea onto the internet.
Right.
So I think I found that though I do keep a relatively active Facebook page because I'm an artist in 2019 and I'm not stupid and oblivious.
Right.
Like I'm not going to pretend that being a part of the Zuckerberg machine doesn't benefit me.
Right.
But I had to like really like cut down on my time because of, I don't know. It's also an older crowd, which means they're less literate to the way that online communication works. So there's like less, I don't know, maybe I'm getting too deep here, but I have a lot of opinions about the internet because as a disabled person, I never leave my home. So all of my social interaction is via online.
So, because I understand a lot of the conversation, everything going through with the online setup. So you say I didn't know about the never leaving your home thing, but you don't leave the home for other events and things like that. I know that unfortunately you went to Texas because of a funeral. I apologize.
I went to North Carolina. My stepfather passed away last month. Yeah.
So basically, you do everything right out of your office, and then get picked up or mailed out when you need to get things done, and people come to you if they need to get things fitted and things of that nature. Yep,
I pretty much only leave the house to walk to the corner store, or if I'm like a situation where I'm traveling, like going out of town for something, and it's like a preparation. I have to make sure I have all my meds and all of my supplements and all of my mobility devices and all of that rigmarole of disabled travel.
Which is a disaster, I understand.
Yes. Getting on a plane with mobility devices that are like just visible enough to make people know that something's wrong, but when you have an invisible enough illness that they can't really tell what's wrong with you, it's a very judgmental space to navigate, whether or not it's just my anxiety. Because like some of it is actually real, you know? Like some of the judgment is real, but also I'm very anxious.
That's another point of us doing this thing. It's trying to go through and break down barriers in regards to even disability and almost invisible and almost invisible issues like that. I do remember working with a man that I didn't notice anything was wrong about him or whatnot until we started talking about Halloween costumes. And he mentioned that he went as the lamp from A Christmas Story.
Oh, no, I see where this is going.
And
that's amazing.
And I was like, "Oh, what did you do with the other leg?" And what he did was he took his leg off and showed it to me. And I'm like,
Yes.
"Dude, you only have one leg?" He goes, "Hell yeah, I only have one leg." I'm like, "I didn't even know." He's like, "I know because I've been using this like almost all my life, so I'm used to it."
That's fucking amazing.
But
I
thought it was amazing just
so
how
hard.
he went through it. He went through and I didn't judge him I didn't judge him about it, but the fact that he went through and hid his disability enough that most people didn't notice, unless it was one, he was as the leg for a costume party, or two, hey, here's my leg, can you hold this? I expected him to like do in the future. He probably went like was the legless guy in the Guardians of the Galaxy. I could see that. He looked similar to that too.
But that's how, people who are disabled should be seen. It should be so natural for them to be able to access life that you don't see, that they don't get othered.
Right.
Yeah, and that's really like my part of the reason why I'm so active online, as I was saying, and why I am so avid with content creation is because I really miss performing live. I used to tour doing music and burlesque, and when my chronic illness kind of like decided to go into hyperspeed, I haven't been able really to get out. So it's been really important to me to, like, as I was saying, like cultivating safe online spaces for my community and being really aware of how I interact online and being aware of like what my content means as far as like representing who I am as a person. Because to me, YouTube is my water cooler.
That does make sense, especially if you aren't able to, especially since if it's your primary means to get to know what's going on with the world and talk with people. But that's also another reason why we do the podcast on Discord Live, just to give other people opportunity to hear other people speak live that might not be able to. So someone that, I know I've personally paid to go and see a live podcast performance, but not everybody can do that. And
I have crushing social anxiety, so it's never going to happen for this podcast.
They would have to pay us the really big bucks.
I am only comfortable if there's a microphone and spotlights between me and whoever I'm talking to. Like I'm a person who's more comfortable in a performance role than I am probably in my day-to-day life, for sure.
So, one of the things that I know that you had more than likely had costume experience before that, but what got you to start with the doing the costuming for wrestling? I used to have a wrestling podcast where they would talk. My people on my podcast would talk about Chikara all the time, and especially like with a lot of the intergender wrestling that they are able to accomplish because of its within its family friendly atmosphere. What got you to start with the full out designing for wrestling?
Well, I married a pro wrestler, and he's impossible to say no to.
Oh, that's legit.
I married one of the most strong-willed, independent, creative, talented, and intelligent people I've ever met in my entire life, and it's a fucking nightmare. I essentially what happened was he needed a costume because there was another gear maker who didn't come through, and I've been sewing since I was very small. My grandmother was a quilter and my mom was a theatrical costumer, and I worked in theater costumes when I was a teenager, both making my own costumes as well as working for the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair as the assistant costumer when I was 15.
That's some hardcore shit. Those serious people.
I was one of those people that was like, that's not period, that's not period. That I was one of the historically, like, you can't wear that here people.
And we need you.
Yes. Otherwise, everyone would be wearing purple polyester satin bloomers.
And very sad. Very, very sad. Sweaty.
Yeah, so I was doing costumes for myself, and then I was doing costumes for local theaters and independent theater production, as well as my own burlesque costumes. And I've worked in sewing jobs because of that. Like, I used to sell sewing machines, and I used to work in a bridal shop. And using that accumulated knowledge and a lot of YouTube searching and craftster.org tutorials, I taught myself how to sew to some extent. And then when my husband had the need for the gear, I tried to make it, and I didn't fail too horribly. And then, and it was awful. It was like the worst sewing process I've ever had to go through. I was like literally for 2 days laying on the ground, screaming, like throwing things, kind of awful experience. Eventually it started being worth as much money as it was heartache. And it is hovering around there still.
That's good. There's always a need for good seamstresses.
Yes. We are going to be very helpful once the apocalypse comes, because you're going to have nowhere to get your clothes when there's no globalization of trade.
Rennies have cultivated a wonderful network of people who are predisposed to help each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will survive, and, the few mundanes that we like will be allowed to continue.
Yeah, I don't have any Armageddon skills that I could think of. I gotta work on that.
Communication skill is important, though, because that's the thing is, as we go into the future, one of the reasons that feminism is so important, and not just gender equality, but just being aware of other perspectives is so important, is because we are being given, as we close on the apocalypse of information, like, we're being given ultimate access to each other. And it's important that we cultivate emotional skill to navigate these new boundaries. And I'm sure the apocalypse will be the same. Being a good communicator is going to be vital to that experience just as much as me being able to sew you shut.
Well, I agree with that. However, in the apocalypse, you're going to still have to work on building up to be able to get a good means of communication instead of just going through and possibly doing rousing speeches, which, even though I'm a former Toastmaster, I'm not really good at the rousing speeches part. However,
it sounds like you need to up your charisma stats before the revolution.
That's what he's got me for. He will write the speech. I will read the speech. It'll be fine.
Literally, I'm like, look, I'm gonna be basically my job in feminism that I joke, but it's kind of like true, is I will be your white guy. If you're not being heard, I will be your white guy and say, listen to that person. They might not be a straight white male, but they actually know what they're talking about. I'm just a white guy that doesn't.
Isn't I Will Be Your White Guy a George Michael song?
I don't know. Where is our research monkey? Research monkey, look this up.
That's really the problem that we're butting up against right now. Is one, hardcore feminists, we have a problem sometimes talking to potential allies because they're using the long language, and we're like, you sound like the oppressor,
Yeah. Oh my god. That is such
and we get
thing.
freaked out. It's a fight or flight response because we've had to be up against so many of these fucking conversations that we don't know if you're going to be a benign well actually, or the kind of well actually that's going to dox us.
Yes.
And
No, that's
why that job of the white male ally, of the white appearing male appearing ally, even if you aren't necessarily identified that, but just appear that way societally, like in either your presentation or your identification personally, like that, it's going to be part of our bridge, because that white male ally needs to be not just the person saying they know what they're talking about, but also, like, even if the dog bites you, it just means it's scared. It doesn't mean it's trying to hurt you. And I'm not saying that all feminists are dogs trying to bite you, but I'm saying that enough of us schizophrenic chihuahuas who have been harassed our entire lives, eventually we're going to lash out. And sometimes it's in the wrong places. And we need the white male allies to be like, hey, please don't make a period joke. Be cool, be cool, be cool.
Please be cool. Please be cool.
Please be cool. Please be cool. Please be cool. That person's language might not be, and it's going to be your job to be the translator between us feral femmes and potential allies.
Feral femmes, riot girls. What's next? What are we gonna get next?
I like this whole feral femme riot girl designation.
Yeah, because it's like I'm talking to my husband the other day. I was like, I'm not a domestic goddess. I'm a domestic goblin.
Yeah,
like I like being in my home, but it's not clean. I like entertaining, but you're gonna be sitting next to some trash.
Yeah, just the whole mind-blowing difference between well actually and well actually I'm going to stalk you is so scary and hard to define.
I know, the line is like, where are we supposed to look? What are the new signs? And the problem is men aren't given the emotional communication. I'm sorry, this is a generalization. I'm sure someone will find this and come at me somehow. But
fuck
men, I realize this isn't a space where that necessarily would count, but I just want to put the caveat out there. Should this inevitably be context, I'm just preparing for when I'm extremely famous in a decade. Okay.
Hey, if what you say on this podcast is brought up in a decade because you're extremely famous, if we're not, we'll probably get some more Patreon followers. So I'm true.
Good. So, yeah, that the line is so hard to define because we, as the emotional laborers of society so far, we understand the code that currently exists, right? Like, we know what we're looking at when we're looking at the subtext of the world because we've been taught to see it. Men, as a rule, haven't been taught to see the subtext. Even if they're bleeding it, even if they're oozing it out of their fucking pores, they have no idea. They don't know that they seem awkward or creepy or whatever, They don't know the language. And right now, women are essentially saying, like, as they're learning the language, sometimes they're misusing it or like it's like any language. You misuse it or you misunderstand it. You say a word wrong or whatever. But they haven't been given that language in the first place to be able to identify how the language is going to transform. Like, they don't know what to look for always to see the problem. You know what I mean? What my friends of mine call boy looking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's an unfortunate symptom. And I think that male allies have such a tough time because, like, you really are, like, you're in foreign lands essentially, because a lot of times, assuming your parents weren't like the most connected therapist hippies on the planet, you have been conditioned to ignore it. You've been conditioned to not only ignore the subtext that's around you, but also to ignore what you could be feeling at all. And it's like it makes everything so foggy, and it makes those lines so blurry because women are watching the writing on the wall, and a lot of times men are looking at it and they don't see anything in the first place.
Yeah, I understand what you're getting at. For example, with the election, I was like heartbroken just because I knew what was going to happen because of it. And we're seeing it now with Georgia, unfortunately Ohio,
so angry.
Texas, Missouri, all that. On top of the possible war in Iran and the people children separated from their families on the border. It's...
Yeah, humans with uteruses and those who sympathize isn't a great group to be a part of at the moment.
Yeah.
I've been having... Because of everybody else's suffering, I've been going through my own vicious cycle of suffering too, because it's like, yeah, this bad thing happened to me, but it's not as bad as everybody else. And you need to be able you need to be able to realize that while everybody's needs are needed, you need to be able to work through what you need to work through to be able to still help everybody else where you can.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like I said, it's kind
you have to learn how to decode this stuff first, and it's just that's why I was like the male allies are so important right now, because you are like, oh my god, what's the name of the decoder ring? And
translator.
Speaking of, yeah, the decoder ring, the Little Orphan Annie decoder ring from frickin' Christmas Story, like you were talking about earlier. Like you're our key.
Yeah. You're the thing that we push here. Here is the thing that will translate what we're saying into something you can understand.
Yes. Please use whatever the language needs to be in order for men to understand what we're saying, because clearly the way we're talking is not having an effect.
And the sad thing is, if men just listen, 99.9% of what you're saying is plain common. I'm going to say common because not everybody speaks English, but whatever their local language is, common.
Mm-hmm.
And men just don't get it. And then you repeat the same exact thing that a woman says, like, "Oh, I get it, because this woman just said it."
It's because if you are told your whole life that the person that you're looking at is an alien, like you are told from day one that you are something and that person is something else, and you could own that thing. You can own that thing. Yeah. And you can claim property of that thing. And that thing is there to serve you. The one that you have at home is there to serve you. And it's an empathy machine, and it's a caregiving robot.
And
thing is a caregiving robot. They can't hear the language because everything, it has this dial tone of caregiving robot over top of it, and it bleeps out anything that we could possibly say. It's a complete, there's like we're up against sometimes an impossible, like, it's so unfortunate even when you see it like in people that you love, that you're like watching them struggle with in a battle they might not even know they're fighting.
Yeah, that's really frustrating. I've got a friend who's so close to getting it.
Right? You're just like, oh my god, you're so. But because it's not like I don't sympathize, because it's the same thing that white people have to deal with racism.
Yeah,
it's the same shit. It's that if we're told our whole lives that people that aren't the same color as us are different, that they're not human,
or they're just other, not human. They're other. The white, particularly straight white male, is the default setting. That's the default character.
That's the only real human person. That's the only one. If I was told that my whole life, I would believe it. Just like the same people that are told their whole lives that like you can't get an STD the first time you have sex, or whatever dumb bullshit idea that they use to blind us. I say they, meaning no one in particular, and us, meaning no one in particular.
Well, they is very particular. They is everyone who benefits from and supports the patriarchy. If this sounds like you...
Please apply at 1-800-GO-FUCK-YOURSELF.
No. If that sounds like you and you're listening to this podcast, welcome. We're here to help. Please write us at...
Right.
We all have
I'm sorry.
Whatever
I'm
our website is.
We're very welcoming here in the revolution.
We try to be, but sometimes...
I know that the chocolate chips and the cookies look like Xanax, but it's just your eyes tricking. Also, they're gluten-free.
No, that'll scare them off. Just say words gluten-free. And those are not snowflake sprinkles on them either.
No.
So you basically been doing everything from a young age.
Yes.
What made you you did theater and burlesque. What got you to going into the theater and burlesque part as from someone at a young age?
Well, I don't know if you know, but when women take their clothes off, they get attention.
No! Really?
Yeah. Being a woman that takes their clothes off is like being an attention factory. And when you have a personality disorder, all you want is attention. So that's why I started becoming a stripper, and honestly a performer in general. But genuinely, I was using burlesque as a way to understand the context of what I had been told since I was a young age. Like, this is like dark and hard, but listen, welcome to the Feminism Podcast. It's dark and hard.
Phrasing.
When I was, yes, I'm not taking it back, and I am talking about my dick.
Okay. As long as we're absolutely clear and we've gotten all the dick jokes out of the way.
Yes.
Because we're about to get heavy.
Yes, we gotta sprinkle in some dick jokes there. You gotta be like, hey, strap on, blah, 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 before you move forward into how stripping is connected to the patriarchy.
Just a little reminder, there's 6 warnings at the very beginning of the podcast.
Right.
At least the last 2 podcasts. So if they don't understand that this isn't possibly safe talk.
Yes. All right. So basically, I have been, due to the nature of society, catcalled and sexualized from an extremely young age. And including my time at the Renaissance Fair, being in a place where artists felt like there are no laws is never necessarily a healthy space for a teenager to be, because there are people that take advantage of the boundaries of fantasy. I was getting told I was hot, and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that power meant. And I understood that I wanted to be an adult woman, and I wanted to be a sexy person because I thought that's what would make me valuable. And I used burlesque to learn how to navigate the way I was being objectified. And
that's brilliant.
I used it to understand, and sometimes it got into places that weren't necessarily healthy. Like, though it is not a path that I am like ashamed of, I don't necessarily believe that my time in strip clubs and being a cam girl were necessarily healthy for me. Like, just who I am as a person. It's just not, I'm not meant to be a sex worker in that nature.
That is valid and legit.
Yeah. Like, it's like I said, not like, I'm not like, oh, I would never, not like that. I mean, like, it's just not, it wasn't where I was supposed to be, just for my brain and who I am. There were spaces like that, but there were also places where the ability to be in queer positive spaces and a space, and like, especially later in my career, being in more intersectional and just sex positive spaces helped me develop a pretty decent understanding of who I was as a person. And I think I acted necessarily like, I was kind of like a hypersexual teenager, and then I used burlesque as like a way to figure out kind of why I was being like that. And I'm not really a hypersexual person, but it's thanks to my time in burlesque and sex work that I was able to learn things about not only the sex industry, but also myself and the patriarchy and the tools of the patriarchy and how to fight against them.
So you took an experience that you found out that you might not be suited for in the long run, but used it to actually gain tools to help in the future.
Yeah, to learning and growing, it's a thing.
You said you follow me on Twitter. I don't know how much I've posted about it recently, but last year I did a music video called Trigger Warning, that is a song about gun control, in which I juxtapose images of sex work in the sex industry with the ideas, the legislation behind guns and the lack of legislation, and how women are commodified. And it may or may not culminate in me having a cowboy 6-shooter as a strap-on.
I appreciate everything that was just conveyed to me on a deeply personal level. I'm thrilled by that.
Good, because you're like one of the 600 people who give a shit.
Well, it's just such an amazing concept. I don't know how you could not find that fascinating.
But yes, I wouldn't necessarily participate in burlesque as a career or in strip clubs as a career now. I am really appreciative of my time there, and the history of burlesque is so connected to the history of feminism in America, and the sex industry is so connected to the history of feminism in America that I just strippers are truly the patron saints of and of femininity to me. Like, I think that the stripper is like the ultimate symbol of female power, and so I wanted to become one, and I did, and I know now how to use the paint color that is sexuality, but I don't necessarily want it to be the only color I paint with, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it's absolutely, yeah. There's so much more we can do, but we need to understand how sexuality is controlled and channeled and marketed and otherwise
and utilized and hidden from us, and just the narratives that are spoken to us from such a young age that are just impossible to undo. Like the concept of virginity, what the hell is that? Just like, what the fuck?
It only matters if you care about things like property management.
Right. That's the thing. It's 100% about the hymen or whatever property. But like, there's not a word for people who aren't virgins anymore.
Well, like there are, but it's
well, that's the thing is, it's not. But that's not a word for just a person who is not a virgin. That's a nature of a spectrum of whether or not you are having sex, of how much sex you are having. I mean, like the way that the virginity is like an on and off switch in our society. Like there's not the word for the off switch. Welcome to I use cannabis as my primary painkiller. Welcome to the patriarchy.
I so wish that worked for me. But you still do costuming for other burlesque performers, or?
Yes, I do. Not as many anymore, just because burlesque is yet another art form that is like primarily about bullshitting people into how much you paid for something.
Right.
Like, so there's a lot of love put into burlesque costumes, but burlesque dancers don't make a ton of money.
Right.
So it's not like I'm going to charge my buddies like tons of money to make them stuff, because I know like burlesque dancing is even less lucrative than stripping, and like extremely less lucrative than stripping.
Which is ridiculous.
I wasn't a very lucrative stripper for me, so it's like even less lucrative, but it's because I was a bad stripper.
It wasn't your art form, and you weren't bad at it. It just wasn't your thing.
No, I was bad at it, almost on purpose, guys. I would dance to like Minnie the Moocher and stuff, and like Weird Al. Like I was not a good stripper, but I had a great time.
Dancing to Weird Al makes you a bad stripper. It makes you a very niche stripper.
Yeah.
And that's different from being bad. Niche is not necessarily bad.
But I don't do a ton of burlesque costumes anymore. They are such a labor. But because wrestling is burlesque, but with fighting, people are willing to invest a lot more money in it. So that's why I make wrestling costumes. It's a slightly more lucrative labor of love.
All right, so let me ask this: what would be one of the weirdest costuming requests that you might have received for wrestling?
The weirdest costuming request I ever received for wrestling. I'm saying that at you, babe.
Past Haribo.
Yeah. Okay, so one time, so the company, the candy company Haribo makes gummy bears.
Right.
They hired me to make 3 Lucha outfits for some of their sales team to wear because they passed a certain sales goal, and it was part of their like sales initiative that their managers would wrestle at the company event, at a company event.
What? This is hard. Wait, let me. I gotta come back at this a different way, because listen, what you just you said a lot of words that don't make sense together.
Okay, so it's like, okay, do you guys watch John Mulaney? Now, I don't have time to unpack all of that.
No,
but
just
we do. So Haribo, the gummy bear company.
Okay, yeah, I got the Haribo the Gummy Bear Company hired you to make luchador costumes because some people met a sales goal and they were gonna wrestle.
Yes. So the
That
sales manager, the sales manager of Haribo was one of the sales directors for Haribo America. Was like a former backyard wrestler.
Okay.
And as a joke, he was like, if you guys meet this sales goal, this insane sales goal, I'll wrestle these other guys at the next company event. And they did. So he got the gear made, and we had got like special Haribo fabric printed. And there are no photos of it because it was at a private company event.
That's sad. You need photos for your
we have the fabric, so it's like it's not like a complete "Are you afraid of the dark?" just fade into the mist situation. Like it's not just like there's dust in my hands. Like there is evidence that the thing existed. One of my husband's masks is lined in the scraps of the Haribo gear.
You had custom Haribo fabric made for this. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the surrealism of the entire thing. And it's beautiful, and don't get me wrong, it's amazing. And this is a fantastic story, but it's mind-blowing.
It is totally insane. It's totally insane. Oh, I also I made, this is on the top of my head right now because I just won an award for it. I just won an award for the costumes that I did for a wrestling ballet film.
Okay.
So it was two ballerinas who did a Lucha Libre-inspired burlesque performance in a wrestling ring as like lucha ballerinas. And
that's amazing.
My husband did some consulting for it, and I made the costumes, and I actually just won an award for it.
Yeah, I saw you posted the award on Twitter.
Yes, I did post the award on Twitter because I am #that bitch. Though my friend Co just told me yesterday or the other day that bitch is a tool of the patriarchy and I need to stop using it. I know that they're right, but
they're not.
I haven't found a good word that says the same thing.
See, here's the thing. Like some other words.
Yeah, like queer. I know that we're kind of, but also.
Well, I was thinking some other words.
Words. I guess there's just, I'm not, I'm still ambivalent. I'm on the fence. I use it, but I still have a pang of guilt in my chest about it, I guess. It's an interesting place to be, such as being a feminist in 2019, where you're where's the line? Is that the line? I should know where the line is by now.
Why does nobody tell us where the line is?
Why can't we trust the people who tell us where the line is? Because 95% of the time, it's white feminist influencers who don't even understand 99% of the story.
Why are we applauding? Why are we doing a slow clap? Don't make it weird.
Because what she said, what I see a lot through Twitter mostly, is just that. It's a lot of white feminist influencers that don't actually care, don't actually realize that they're not being intersectional.
Oh,
they don't know the code.
Yeah,
they don't know the code.
Or they choose not to know the code.
I know. The blatant choosing of the code is sometimes I mean, I know kind of we have all watched our parents do it in some way or the other. Is whether or not they realize that there's a blatant choosing of the code. As progressive as any parent could be, there's still going to be a moment where we're ugh. And it's probably the most painful experience is watching a loved one just blatantly be I'm choosing to believe the code.
The code. Yeah. It's so complicated because just the not being grounded in the reality.
Yeah. It's this, it's almost everyone's willing to play the simulator and you can see the matrix. It's we can see the matrix through a glass wall and some people are choosing to be on the other side of it. It's I mean, when I was a teenager, I always romanticized the 60s, and now I'm living through my own 60s, and I'm I was an idiot. I should have let Bob Dylan be.
Yeah. But one of the things that blows my mind about the code is, now I've seen this in a former gaming group I was a part of. I'm not naming any names, but we all know which one it is. That there are some feminists, and I'm using the term loosely.
I heard the air quotes. They appeared in front of my eyes like a cartoon.
Okay, because I was like gonna do them, and then I stopped and I deliberately folded my hands because I'm like, they're trying really hard. But again, like my one friend, they're so close and they don't get it. Like, one of my big fucking hills that I'm gonna die on, and I will take as many people with me as possible, is consent-based roleplay. And I was using language that somebody was extremely uncomfortable with, and they're like, blah, 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 and you're equating these two things, and no. But yes, I am. And here's why. Roleplay, whether it is in the bedroom, or in the basement of a church, or the woods, or wherever the fuck you play pretend, it is a consent-based thing. You cannot engage without both people enthusiastically being involved. I mean,
and also, isn't the point, like, I mean, I watch a lot. I'm not a LARPer, but I am adjacent to LARPers, and I watch a lot of LARP YouTube. It isn't the nature of LARP and what makes it such a valuable tool for, and a valuable emotional processing tool, is that it's an allegory for the world we want to live in, or the way that we see things, so that we're able to work through these emotional changes. We're able to play act them, so that if we meet them in real life, we'll be able to slay those fucking dragons. Like,
yes,
that's the point. So why wouldn't you invite consent into that space? You have to, in order to teach about the world you want to live in. We need to be able to be realistic about boundaries. The having of boundaries doesn't make you a bad person. And I don't know at what point in time that narrative developed in our society, but it's really strong.
That's the thing about certain LARPers and certain organizations. They don't read about the idea of the boundaries of consent, emotional, mental, and things of that nature. They might see no physical contact, but they will do everything else in their power to try to go off and cripple you, just because it's not, quote unquote, really you. It's a character. It's not really them, but a character. Not realizing that the trauma
fuckers
that a person goes through while running a character can feel like real trauma, or is real trauma,
and can mirror real trauma that,
I mean, it's not even
gone
about
through.
necessarily the reality of the trauma. It's about the fact that whether or not certain aspects of your brain might understand that you went through an emotional situation in a play acting setting, your body doesn't. Your body doesn't know.
They don't.
And your body is going to bring, and your body, including the supercomputer that runs it, is going to be flashing chemicals through there based on the thing that happened, that it believes that happened. That's 90% of my chronic pain, is my anxiety enacting my worst fears through my nerve system.
Mm-hmm.
I know it is. And that's the thing, is like, you can't tell the meat sack part of your brain that you didn't really get in a fight with someone or whatever. You can't undo that experience. And that's the reason why people don't understand, like, when you tell kids, oh, I'm just pretending, that's such a complex thing. It's so complex, a lot of adults don't understand it.
Yeah. And then when you come into a group and you say, I have had an experience, and this experience that I'm having in character is mirroring a reality, and then they blow you off, that's
like,
it's like, no, I need to do XYZ so that I can keep this thing that you want me to keep. Work with me. And then they don't work with you.
Yeah, because they just don't, there's such a little, very few people are versed in that level of emotional communication and connection. I mean, I only find that people have that level of understanding of their reality if they have mental health problems or if they have a loved one with mental health problems, because then you're introduced to those tools whether you like it or not. You have to use them, because if you don't use them, you're going to cut yourself or someone else. And it's just not common knowledge. It's just not commonly taught emotional skill, at least not in our generation.
Just out of curiosity, what is your generation?
I'm 28.
Oh, you're a baby.
because there's many similarities with the Gen X and the millennials that sometimes.
Oh yeah, my brothers are in their 40s. My brothers are. My one brother just turned 50. I'm sorry, Jesus Christ, I forgot how old.
Oh, hey, your one brother is just slightly younger than my husband.
Yeah, so my brothers are 50 and 48. So I've been treated like all of their pop culture knowledge went to me. Like it was like it skipped a generation. Like I grew up with their toys and stuff.
Right.
So I've always hung out with their friends, and I didn't really have a lot of friends my age when I was a kid. I had a lot of adult friends who played D&D.
And that's okay.
But when I say our generation, I mean anyone younger than a baby boomer.
I mean, that's legit.
Because it's the people that are going to go into the future. Just being realistic, my mom is almost 70 years old. She's not thinking about 45 years down the line. She's just not.
She can't.
Like,
that's so far away.
That's the thing is, like, when that's what I mean is in our generation. I mean, people who are currently like willing to talk to a computer, who understand the way communication is working at the level that it is right now, who people who are living in the cultural zeitgeist that is the difference and the constant transformation of communication.
Yeah, I've noticed just with being 12 years younger than my husband that there's some overlap, and then there's some glaring differences. Like Facebook is,
it's like there's like a big hole. And sometimes I look at my family members who are, I don't know, who are in their 50s and 60s, and I'm like, how did they just not teach you this? Like, how are you just not thinking about it? Mm-hmm. This is like, where's the can we just agree that there's a problem? Oh no, not even that. Perfect. Lovely. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, it's the Facebook.
The code.
Yeah, the code. And my husband is learning. It's astonishing. I was flipping through my Facebook memories, and a year ago, the Somerset early access must have kicked in because I had to post about the fact that my husband had been up all night with his chronic pain and therefore doing quests. And fucking around in Tamriel. And he says to me, I've had something like that's too much toxic masculinity, and it's only Monday. And it was just one quest line. And when we had started dating, it wouldn't have occurred to him to read the quest coded in that way.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that, because my husband is, like, as I said, a pro wrestler, and given that he's a pro wrestler, there is a very real culture of toxic masculinity in that space, like just the nature, and it's like, and he lives and breathes it. And now, as we're both like learning about what society looks like and what it's looking like as it moves into the future, he too is like sort of waking up to this, realizing what is happening around him. I completely understand that feeling of like, there are things that my husband has said within the past year that I'm like, I'm so happy that I married you, but also I don't think I married you.
Well, I see it as, my husband is leveling up.
Yeah.
Every time he discovers a new thing or grasps a new concept that he didn't before. He's, leveled up in a way in his own life, and it's great. My Facebook contained the comment that, he's come a really long way for someone who was a nihilistic ex-himbo when we met.
Mm-hmm.
And he has. He was bordering on misogynistic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he is also in the office, and he is correcting me, and he's saying he was misogynistic when we met. So to be where he is now is such a difference.
Yeah, my husband was right out of the Air Force when we met.
Yeah, that'll do some shit to you.
Yeah,
Right
it was yeah.
I've heard bad things about the military and having, a soul.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is because men are not given the same level of emotional communication, they're not taught about the code from an early age, it's way easier to trick them. You put enough like images of bombs over Baghdad or whatever to that song or you play Let the Bodies Hit the Floor while showing whatever the hell, like it'll be enough to spur some jingoism, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any kind of music that we use it all the time. And I mean, knowing what it's for doesn't mean it doesn't work.
Exactly.
I am a sports fan. And so I am not going to lie. I'm a huge college sports fan. I love my Buckeyes, and they are amazing. Ohio against the world. And I have reactions. I'm also a big hockey fan, and I love my Jackets. And we got fucking robbed by shitty ice in Boston, and also a bad call. But that's a separate rant. I know exactly why they play what they play. I can't listen to the intro to Hell's Bells without getting slightly amped up. And that is slow. But we use it, the team uses it in the stadium experience, as they're walking out, and then they like all gather in the end zone, and they do this swing thing. It's just this big...
It's the theatrics.
Yeah, and the theatrics will sucker us every time.
Yeah, because there's a reason, that's what church used to be, and now church isn't really like that anymore. Church is like this place where you go to get your ass handed to you, I guess, by God.
It's boring.
So now that church isn't fun, and the fun people don't go to church, and that is the way, unfortunately, that it is. I mean, we have these things that take up the same place that church took up when we didn't have as many different types of communication and entertainment. When the church was about having an emotional experience together. I mean, that's what paganism was rooted in, was that emotional journey together is what spellcraft is.
Yes.
And that sports experience, the gladiatorial experience, is a vital part of culture, especially right now. It's why I will fight to the death to defend wrestling, because I am not a sports fan. It is too close to math for me to like it. I'm like, why do I have to know so many numbers in order for this fun to happen? It's very confusing for me.
Well,
and sometimes
the numbers don't come into it for me.
I just have I come from a family that's very anal retentive. So sports has always been connected to numbers.
Oh, they like stats.
Yeah. So they're D&D players, so they play sports the same way. It's that same kind of...
Yeah, talk about fantasy sports.
Yeah, not fantasy sports, but they would view... It's the same kind of viewing experience. It's just my family. It's the reason why I do so many things, and I'm such a perfectionist. It's because it has to be... We have to find the most efficient... What is the way? So I also just... finding that kind of thing. It's like the makers in us, the engineers in us. We have to find the secret special way to do the thing to make it the most efficient. So I'm not a sports person. The closest I get to sports is watching people play Dungeons and Dragons on Twitch, which I like to call theater sports, or competitive cooking television. I guess an athletic competition, but wrestling is my sports. Wrestling is my sports entertainment. Copyright Vince McMahon, please go fuck yourself. Your whole family's trash.
A friend of mine, my friend Donnie, just recently said that he suspended his Twitter account, and the first thing I went off and said, like, yes, but before you suspended Twitter, did you punch Vince in the dick? And he said he didn't say if he did or not, but we're assuming no.
But
if you're not punching Vince McMahon, are you even alive?
That's true. I feel like he feels that way as well.
What, that Vince McMahon should be punched?
No, I think Vince McMahon feels like if you aren't punching Vince McMahon, are you even alive?
That's fair.
Because that's who you give the biggest pop to. I mean, that's the guy who you're trying to really put over. If Vince McMahon lets a dude punch him on television, that's essentially like you kiss in the ring.
Yeah.
Welcome to wrestling. It's a perfect and also the worst. But wrestling is my gladiators. It is my way that it is a story being told through combat. And that's like the only way I can get close to a situation where I would watch people do like actual athletic thing. I get like American Ninja Warrior, I guess is technically, that's also a narrative. So like, yeah, I can't do it without the narrative. But it's that crowd experience together. We're all saying the same thing at the same time. There's a, like, you're in the know and you let other people kind of in the know when it comes to like chants and responses or ways you interact with a certain wrestler, like going to high five them or booing them. And it's this ritual. It's a ritualistic experience. And having so many people, you can feel the energy difference. It's the reason you would go to see a band live versus listening to them on CD. And that's religion these days. The same with burlesque shows. Burlesque is another type of religion. It was my religion for a good, I think it might still be. I think burlesque is my religion, and as such should remain a private practice. But it's that wanting of community, of kinship, of sharing a story as it happens, of this watching of things unfold, of unpackaging a mystery together. It's a primal, important experience that we need to have as we learn how to build communities as the world changes.
Yeah.
Sports and wrestling and all of it. It's all extremely important.
And one of the things that I have, some of the code that I have been using when I deal with people who are very shut up and dribble, shut up and play. When again, I'm from Ohio. I grew up in Akron. LeBron James is roughly the same age as my little brother. So, we were all moving about the region roughly the same time. I may have seen him at the mall. That's the kind of that's just how Akron is. But LeBron James is a huge activist, and he's one of the most powerful people in sports right now, if not the country. I read an article where he convinced I think it was Phil Knight he was talking to. They were talking about the young men in their lives learning to drive. And LeBron is worried about his son getting shot. And I think it was Phil Knight is only worried about his grandsons, because that's the age difference, getting a speeding ticket or dying in a car crash. Those are the things. And the difference is why they went with the Kaepernick, why they jumped on that and they pushed that and they did what they did.
And that's such I get so disappointed by the narrative surrounding sports players. I'm because these connection points are so important. Like, as we were talking before about like building allyship, like these spaces that are still such a boys club, that are the boys club. Sports and wrestling are the boys clubs. Like, they are important places for feminism and intersectional feminism and like statements of racial equality and things like that to exist, because you are the ones who need to hear it the most.
Yes.
Like that, of course he protested at the frickin' why? Because wouldn't you? Like,
yeah, LeBron is black all the time.
Like, if you could go to the ticket to under a white man seeing a thing and not being able to not see it factory and buy the, like, of course I would.
Yes.
Duh.
Duh,
I would state my message at the white boy factory.
Yes. But we're not allowed to go talk where the racism factories are. They don't want us. They're the ones who say shut up and dribble. Just shut up and play.
Exactly.
Stop kneeling.
And that's
existing where we have to look at you.
It's the point. Please don't make me see the code. I don't want to see it. Please plug me back into the matrix. Just plug me back in. You're literally like in the goo, like just struggling to hold yourself under while all of your stuff is unplugged. That's what that person is doing.
Yeah.
Holding yourself under the goo, drowning yourself in the matrix goo.
That's such a horrifying image, but it's so accurate that it's just if you would listen to them outside, if you would listen to them in the streets, if you would listen to them on the news, on the steps of City Hall, on all of the places.
But you don't. So they gotta go to your frickin' pretend war, to your play war that we are all very fortunate to have, because it means that we're not watching people. I guess we are watching people actively shoot each other. So, like, what are sports for at this point? If we can just watch that all the time in real time, thanks America.
Well, see,
this is such a
we've taken away the intersectional feminism has taken away. And the demands for racial equality have taken away that sanctuary for white men to fight proxy wars with people that aren't really people, because the toy soldiers are demanding things like recompense for the concussions they're suffering. They're reminding, because
they're like, wait a minute, we're not the dummies you think we are. I realize that you just let us have concussions so that we don't figure out you're mistreating us. But we shouldn't have this many concussions.
We shouldn't have this, and you lied. And you need to take care of that shit.
Man, lying for his own benefit? Are you sure?
I'm going to bring up another podcast for a hot second, because it feeds into this. I'm a big fan of crime in sports. They do a lot of wrestling and MMA. You might enjoy it, because it's mostly crime and not so much sports. So they don't, they talk about the sports career of these athletes who then do crime. But there's over the course of all of the podcasts, two things have stood out. One, sports with head trauma feature more in the podcast, because repeated concussions apparently turn you into reckless people who tend to behave criminally.
What do you mean? I don't understand. If you hit the sensitive thing covered in nerves rattling around in a bone jar that gives us all our feelings against hard stuff a bunch, are you telling me that the delicate neurons are somehow damaged irreparably in some way?
Yeah.
Because, like, they don't form new neural pathways because they aren't given any emotional skills to do that, and you, like, rob them of their brain's elasticity by not letting them get the proper care? What do you mean?
What do you mean brains break? Yeah, so we have the hockey, the football, wrestling, MMA, all those sports. They do violent crime. Baseball and cricket and things that are less head trauma connected. Those fuckers do the gross sex crimes and the white collar crime.
Yeah, that's just crime from white people being terrible.
Yeah,
that's just statistically gonna happen, given how many white dudes are pedophiles. It's
a power balance. It's a cognitive thing. If you have the knowledge of what a powerful figure you are, because you're a sports star, and you can
Mhm.
and you can hang on to your think long enough for that to
Right.
criminal.
For you to like, yeah, I
to-
totally get where.
Then you do stealthy crimes. If you have a lot of head trauma, you do drugs and you do dumb crimes that are violent because you've lost your impulse control.
Yeah, you murder your family and then kill yourself because of the Bible, and that's a thing.
That's also a
Chris
thing.
Benoit.
But the other thing that has come up through it is the term silver-haired middle-aged white man. And Vince McMahon is one of those, because we've referenced him earlier, that, you don't have to be old enough to have gray hair, but they're the people who benefit from the labor and the pain and the repeated brain trauma and the not taking care of the athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They're the silver-haired middle-aged white man is the puppet master. They're the ones who are the most angry when the puppets remind the viewers that they're people.
Yeah.
And like not seeing that our favorite football players, my football team is mostly black all the time, and we need to acknowledge that they're black every day. They're only football players, only in quotes.
Mm-hmm.
They're only football players on Saturday.
I want to go through and give an example of this. All right. Granted, while an asshole is an asshole, I think there's a kind of a double standard here. Ezekiel Elliott recently was handcuffed. Basically, when he was getting into a non-physical altercation with his girlfriend, but he was like blocking her from moving and getting past him. And if he was a white guy, the security guard would have probably ignored it.
Of course you would have.
Even though it's still asshole-ish behavior, but because Ezekiel Elliott is a black guy, something's going on. I have to go through and stop this.
Well, also, I mean, he's already been in the news for possibly being violent.
There's that much of us. That's the thing is, like, it's just.
And then and then there's the other layer where when you're making a ton of money for the NFL and you knock a woman the fuck out on camera for God and everyone to see, thank you, TMZ, for acquiring that footage for us. They give you 2 games and then they're like, yeah, that's good, right? It's good, right? We punished him enough, Ray Rice. No.
Well, in Ray Rice's case, he hasn't gotten a job. Yes, they originally gave him 2 games, and then they're like, yeah, people don't like that. Let's go through and actually give him something that hurts. But it's like the Giants kicker, and I'm saying this as a Giants fan. He got like a 1-game suspension for admitting to beating his wife.
Yeah, see, and then the NFL is like, but we care about women's issues. No, you fucking don't. Don't piss in my ear and tell me it's raining.
They care about women's issues and that they know that there are people that it affects their bottom line. So, like, it's not technically a lie, but it's definitely not the truth. I don't know how long y'all normally record, but I have to go make some wrestling gear.
That's not a problem. We can go through and wrap this up because we usually just let it go until it goes. But
yeah.
So,
but we have to have you back because this has been amazing.
Absolutely. Maybe when I have something more to promote than just my YouTube channel. But I will say,
send me the link to the YouTube channel so I can make sure that that's put on our show notes.
You can just go to youtube.com/KateNix.
All right.
You can also buy my music at katenix.com/music or join my Patreon at katenix.com/join. My name is spelled like Kate, like Kate, and Nix, like Nix, NYX. It's just
Not a problem. I will go through and add those to the show notes. So, with that being said, we want to thank Kate for being with us today.
Yes, you've been amazing.
It's been a fun ride.
Visit us on our website at www.xchromosomepodcast.com. All of our links are there to social media, to Patreon, to donate links through PayPal and everything like that. And once again, next month, while we're going to probably be able to fit a Rage episode in between, next month is going to be Pride Month. So
we're going to get hella gay.
Yep.
Yes.
Write us at xchromosomepodcast.com. My name is Bill.
And I'm Noelle.
And we need to kick out the bot.
Yeah, and go the fuck away, Craig. We hate you.
Go, Craig. Where's the button?
Get out. This is how we end every podcast.
Oh my god, Craig, terrible. Goodbye.
See, this is what we're talking about. Sometimes they just don't know when to leave.